Good morning and welcome. This is MLS 830 Administrative Law and Process. This is an online text-free course, and I'm Attorney Dale Hughes. The materials that you have that are on Blackboard have somewhat of my background and the curriculum vitae associated with my professional and educational experience. Just to summarize a few points, I'm a practicing attorney. My office is located in Portage, Wisconsin, which is north of the capital. My background includes a graduate degree from Johns Hopkins University in International Relations, and then a law degree from the University of Wisconsin. And since obtaining that law degree, I've been practicing in Wisconsin. Much of my practice concerns administrative law, and we'll be drawing on some of those examples and experiences to highlight issues and matters associated with this course. This course is an introductory video, and the materials set out what are the requirements for the course. And each week there'll be several videos which will, first of all, introduce the topic for the day. Secondly, review matters that may have been covered in earlier videos. And third, highlight some of the assignments for the day, perhaps give some tips on research and some further instructions that go along with the assignment for that week. So what I'd like to do next, and having taught this course for about 12 years, anticipating what the questions would be in the classroom. And so the very first thing we want to do is start by an introduction as to what is administrative law. And week 1 of your syllabus, the study of administrative law addresses the question, how do we control administrative agencies and administrative processes? To address this question, we need to know what are administrative agencies, what actions they perform, and what methods are available to control them. Before we launch into any of the answers to those questions, which really will be the focus of the next 8 weeks, I'd like to highlight certain portions of the syllabus, which is online, and hopefully you'll be able to look at that with 2 screens while I'm giving this short video lecture, and you can reference those materials. The first one is a word of caution. In Spanish, cuidado. And so I'm on page 3, and it talks about academic integrity. This is a graduate level course. You have been a student in different universities and are familiar with that notion. I'm highlighting it for you today, and the instruction and the tip is to avoid that temptation. Because as tempting as it is to lift a portion of someone else's work without giving it proper sight and recognition, it's equally easy for my staff to Google that phrase and find it, which has been done in the past. And then there are those consequences. So let's all avoid that unpleasant situation and move right on to the text and the materials at hand. I'm on course objectives, which is on page 4 of those materials. And I want to highlight certain portions of this because they are recurring themes that come out throughout the course of this 8-week materials. And the first one comprehends the constitutional and legislative basis for regulatory agencies. This is not a constitutional law class. And in the classroom at this juncture, I usually ask the students, how many of you are interested in going to law school? Or alternatively, how many of you have dreamed of being a lawyer? Well, the answers are few and far between because you've chosen this career path. And so consistent with that, this course is not going to teach you to think like a lawyer. It's not going to teach you to write like a lawyer. It's not going to teach you to brief like a lawyer. But what it should do, and this is one of the key concepts, this course should identify issues for you that when you are in the workforce as a manager or administrator, mid-level person, that you can identify issues where you need to consult with an attorney. And managers and administrators are constantly consulting with other professionals, be they accountants, be they engineers, be they tech persons. An attorney is just another source in that broad array of experts to use to address questions that come before you. And so this class is designed to identify issues that would necessitate or at least call for a consultation with an attorney. Secondly, distinguishes the concept of due process in administrative law. Well, having said that this isn't going to be a real law course, now I'm subtly throwing in this phrase, due process. But due process is quite important, and it is found in the Constitution, Articles Amendment 5 and Amendment 14. And we'll be talking a great deal about it because due process is one of the means whereby we as citizens, relying upon our Constitution, control the overreach that administrative agencies may undertake in the performance of their duties. Number 3, explains the structure and expansion of governmental agencies. Well, when we begin talking more about this, we'll provide some examples of administrative agencies, and they appear, of course, at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. This course, for the most part, because of the materials that are available, focuses on the federal level. But the pervasiveness of administrative agencies in our daily lives is really quite astounding. And we'll take a moment somewhere down the line here to kind of catalog what those agencies are and how they address just the everyday features of our life. Number 4, summarizes the quasi-legislative function of agencies in the promulgation of regulations. Well, that does sound like a lawyer talking. And promulgation is a phrase that's used in this body of law. It translates into make. Agencies make regulations. And so we're going to look at those functions that the agencies follow. It's called rule making. Analyzes statutory and judicial remedies to agency decisions. That's another component of this case, and we'll look at that really in weeks 6 and 7, where we'll look at in some depth at how the judicial branch attempts to limit the scope and define the discretion that agencies have as they carry out their different responsibilities. Uses and the analysis of proposed administrative rules. This too is a key concept in this class because as managers and as administrators, the focus will be on early intervention in the rulemaking or the decision-making process that administrative agencies engage in. And it's to your benefit as a manager and as administrator to be aware of proposed rules, to have your input through comments and other submissions, perhaps evidence, so that your position, either through your own company or through council or through an association that you belong to, so that you can have the maximum impact on the rules that are being proposed to be created, whether it's by OSHA or whether it's by the Food and Drug Administration, whether it's by a public service commission that oversees utilities, any number of administrative agencies. The tip, of course, is to become involved early rather than late. Now, I'm not going to walk through the entire syllabus on this online video chat, nor do we do that in the class. But one additional comment here on page 5, attitudes, interests, and appreciations, analyzes the challenges presented to administrative agencies in attempting to promulgate rules and regulations, balancing the rights of individuals and the interests of society. In just about every textbook that addresses this subject matter, there is this tension between regulation and between individuals and their rights in society. In fact, at this time in our country, we have the elections going forward, and it's been this tension in our society and in our electoral process for decades. this how do we achieve a balance in individual rights and yet protecting society through proposed regulation. Oftentimes it comes down to an individual's assessment, but here in this class, we're going to revisit this topic again and again to see how agencies and how courts and how legislative bodies have attempted to find that balance and to preserve our rights in our democracy, but at the same time using the strengths and the benefits of a bureaucracy. Now, at this point in time, in the classroom, there would be a hand that would be raised and said, what about the assignments? And in particular, what about this final paper? So let's go right to that part about assignments. I'm on page 5 of these materials. Introductory video, assigned readings. Well, each week we will have some assigned readings, and they are of two different varieties. One are the cases, a very traditional approach in the study of law. We use cases to highlight different principles that courts have articulated that have become part of the body of law of administrative law. And we're going to do that here. And just jumping ahead for a moment, a tip. And we're looking at page 6 of week 1 because we are in week 1. And you'll see there are various cases assigned. Kent v. Dulles, 1958. May sound old, but it still has some applicability. And you'll see after that it has a site, 357 U.S. 116. Now, 3 points to hold in your mind as you're looking for that case to read. I have not referenced any particular website. It's available on multiple websites, your choice. In addition, when you Google or whatever search engine you use, Kent v. Dulles, you may actually find some abstracts, an abridgment, a summary of the case. Go ahead and use that. That would be wise use of your time. In fact, almost all textbooks that are utilized in this study of law will have an abridgment or a summary or a synopsis of the case. So you too should use that approach. That's the second tip. Now, when you're looking at these cases, it's very important to find the right case. And so a little bit of background on our judicial system. There is, of course, a trial level court. That's called the district court. And then there is an appellate court. That's called the appeals court. And then at the federal level, as in many states, there is a Supreme Court. This decision, Kent v. Dulles, is a Supreme Court decision. Sometimes if you Google these cases, you might end up getting the intermediate level decision. And you want to be sure that you're reading the correct case. Very helpful tips and something to keep in mind as we're doing the assigned readings. The other part of assigned readings are journal articles. And these journal articles are to expand upon points that are touched upon in the lecture or that are referenced in some of the materials. So each week there are different journal articles. Some weeks there are more than others, and all of those journal articles will be on Blackboard. Online required responses. So in the classroom setting, in the traditional setting, the approach has been to have online communication between students and with replies. Very useful device, and it allows students to exchange information between themselves. And I found that for students who are somewhat reluctant, reticent to participate in class, this gives them a voice to articulate their opinions and their thoughts regarding different questions. So how do we do that in this environment that's online, text-free, and very likely one student at a time? Well, we don't. And the discussion will be between yourselves and myself, online responses. And so each week there are online responses for you to make a response. And the tip here is the length, 250 words, and the format. The case study and your final paper are to be done in APA format, and you as graduate students are familiar with that. And you'll be graded accordingly on that format and presentation. The online responses, no. We're not looking for APA, nor will you be graded for style and format. Substance, content, thought, effort, all of those, of course, but not for format. Graded assignments, and I might add how these are all weighted are on the next page, self-explanatory. Case briefs. Well, what's a brief? And I thought you said we weren't going to do any type of legal writing. Well, a slight modification of that. Case briefs. A brief is simply that. It is a outline of a case that a court has decided. And it has a very traditional structure. The case briefs will be due weeks 3, 4, 5, and 6, I believe. So we're not going to spend a great deal of time on describing what a case brief is today. There'll be an example, and when that comes up, we'll walk through it and provide greater information for you. Case study. And let me explain how it is that this case study got into the materials. Because it goes hand in hand with the final paper. The case study will trace and discuss the dispute and or litigation arising out of an administrative action taken by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Over the past 5 years, there's been several instances where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have been embroiled in questions about their administrative actions. So there's quite a few to look to. And so the case study is the focus on obtaining information about that dispute, obtaining information about the agency, and presenting that to myself in the case study, which is done over the next couple weeks. How this fits into the final paper is that the final paper will be a situation where you choose an administrative agency, something other than the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then supply the same type of information, its enabling statute and description of the litigation or the dispute, and then completing a larger paper on that as far as your final paper. And let's just jump down to the final paper right now. There's quite a bit of detail here, and if you have questions, email me, we'll answer those questions. But I think for the most part, for an introductory video, these materials cover it. And later on, in week 2 or 3, we're going to be discussing in more detail the approach to be taken in this final paper. Final paper and the case study are to use the APA format, as I mentioned earlier. Oh, one comment about the online discussions. For those of you who have taken these accelerated courses here at Concordia or elsewhere, it's necessary to keep on task. And so your online responses will be due in the week, in the week that they're due. So if you start the first week of the month, then the online response is due before the second week. We're keeping this along and moving it along just as we would in any type of other classroom environment. And so keep that in mind in terms of providing a timely response. We don't, in this online environment, in this text-free environment, we won't be reviewing your online responses in the next lecture or in the next video. And so it's important that you keep up and complete these online responses on time. The rest of the time limits are set forth in the material, so we'll move right along. One additional point, the oral presentation, and I can see someone's hand in the classroom right now. What about that oral presentation? Well, the oral presentation is simply an oral presentation of your final paper. And as I've said so many times in the classroom environment, it's an excellent opportunity for you to practice your verbal communication skills. And those of you, and this is for all of you, who will go on to be managers and administrators, you will have the opportunity to present a matter before the board, before the executive committee, before the officers of the corporation. And so you want to use this opportunity to develop and hone your skills to give a strong, informed, and persuasive oral presentation. Now, we're still marching through this curriculum. Just a few more items, and then we'll take a short break. Resources. I'm on page 7. Internet sites. And I'm going to jump down to C, D, E right away. Those are just standard websites where you can go to get a copy of any number of cases that are available. Your choice. You may wish to bookmark one or the other that you find to be most useful. Then jumping back to A, Administrative Procedure Act and annotations. This is a fairly critical source, and Concordia University Library here at Mequon has access to those materials online. Just a bit of background for you. The laws at the federal level are organized by statute. If you wanted to find the laws relating to income tax, they would be in a particular chapter. If you wanted to find the laws relating to employment law and employment benefits, they would be in a separate chapter. The chapter that you would go to look for, and here's my demonstration for the day. The chapter that you would look to for the laws relating to the procedure for administrative agencies is found in Chapter 5, U.S. Code. And this happens to be U.S. Code annotated. It's a very useful document. It's available online. And this website that's referenced in your course materials will actually get you to this site. And so as we get to week 3, when we're talking about rulemaking, we'll return to that compendium and highlight how it's useful in terms of understanding the issues and sub-issues that arise in administrative law procedures, all found in Chapter 5 of the U.S. Code. Now, it's been my practice to do 2 additional things every time the class meets. First of all is to share a news clipping, and it provides some exchange back and forth with the class and the instructor. As the weeks go on, students and learners find more examples in their daily readings or in their online searches of actions by administrative agencies, and we share that with one another. So that's the first thing that's typically done. And so I have one here. This is from a few years ago, but it involves the great state of Alabama. And it involves a dispute that arose between a hair salon and the board that oversaw or oversees the practice of dentistry in the state of Alabama. So we have an administrative agency, the Board of Dentistry, and we have a dispute that arose to the Supreme Court of Alabama. And here is the finding. The Alabama Supreme Court is blocking the sale of teeth whitening product, Light White, in hair salons in Alabama. The product maker, White Smile USA, and the owners of the hair salon in Montgomery, Randall's, had sued the State Board of Dental Examiners in an effort to apply the product in salons. The board argued that the salons would be practicing dentistry. A Montgomery judge had ruled that the sale and application of light white in a hair salon constituted the practice of dentistry. The state Supreme Court agreed in an unanimous decision. So each week we'll share news stories like this. Some perhaps a bit on the whimsical side, but all with an application. And I encourage you, as you go through this course, to be mindful of news items, wherever you may come across them, that highlight administrative agency actions. The third practice that I've done in teaching at Concordia, which is a Christian university, is to share either a scripture reading, a short prayer, or a meditation that is personal to myself. It's a great privilege to teach in this university with its focus on Christian ethics and Christian practice. And so, Psalm 46 is one that I find myself turning to with some regularity. And Psalm 46 begins with, God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at the break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes war cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. And about the time I get to this be still, my mind is racing with the things that are going on that I have to do today or the things that I didn't do yesterday. And so I go to this psalm and it puts a brake on me, or at least it attempts to put a brake on me for the whirlwind that's going on in my mind. Be still and know that I am Lord. It is a great comfort, and it is an attempt to distance myself from the world and know that it is well with my soul. So that's the end of the first video. We'll return in a few minutes and begin looking at week 1. Thank you.